Okay. So let's get started. Are you all set there? You happy to go?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah. So today, Bill, I would love to talk to you. Actually, I didn't have any specific questions, but more around a topic. And one of your blog posts inspired me to talk about this today because I really think that so many people could benefit from it. And one of your recent blog posts was called If You Assume the Worst, You Will. If you assume the worst, you yourself will bring it about. And it just inspired me to have for me to have this conversation with you today about that, because I believe it's such a prevalent thing in our society that we all spend so much time worrying about what could go wrong or what we don't want to happen. And then before you know it, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I guess to start off, what do you what do you think the reason for that is? Why do you think that we spend so much time worrying about what we don't want to happen?
Fear and attachment are the underlying primal causes of continuous worrying and focusing on what could go wrong and the negative outcome scenarios that we don't want to steer into. So much so that we don't realize that we're projecting that it isn't hidden inside of us, that we're not perfect actors, Pagliaccis who are able to project confidence, but really on the inside we're scared that we're going to screw up and certain bad outcomes are going to happen, like the meeting is not going to go well. And we don't realize that other people can pick that up. They may not realize, those other people, that they are telepathic. They may just think that they're intuitive. And in fact, there may be some, to the normal perceptions, like vision, there may be micro momentary gestures that we make, expressions on our face. It might be fleeting expressions, and then the mask comes up again. Other people read that. They may not read it consciously, but we all do this. We have this mirror neurons complex in our brains that's designed to pick up empathetically information like that. So we're wired to be able to pick up that news from other people. And so we're projecting that negativity and that fear and the inner lack of confidence, which brings about the other people. Well, if he doesn't trust himself, if she doesn't trust herself, why should I trust them? And again, none of that could be at a conscious level. It could all just be at an instinctual, unconscious, subconscious level. Nevertheless, the information does get transmitted. We are all connected. And whether you take a hardline materialistic point of view, or if you're open-minded about the possibility that we're all one consciousness, doesn't really matter. Because this stuff is just happening anyway, however you explain it. You can even explain it based on quantum theory. You could say, as I think said to you before, that John Archibald Wheeler has put forth this theory, which people like Hawking, who is a god in the pantheon of the great scientists in history, that there's this participatory principle where our consciousness helps create the physical and energetic, the material and energy world that we experience. So science says whatever the consciousness has got in it is going to be communicated externally to the world and imprinted on the material experience. So science backs it up. That's only theory, it's not like proven science where it's like a scientific law that's been established and everyone salutes it. but it's getting close to that. And again, it doesn't really matter, because on a practical level, it doesn't matter whether you explain it with atoms, whether you explain it with telepathy, or whether you explain it with God, or whether you explain it just based on our ability to read each other. You know, even before there was language, we were able to sense whether someone was coming at us in a friendly way or an unfriendly way. We're wired to be able to pick up subtle hints like that. So, and sometimes the internal worrying is not so subtly projected. Sometimes it's utterly obvious. You know, when people are continuously negative, when people have scripts where no matter what you say to them, they find some way of throwing cold water on it, then they don't even know they're doing that. But other people sense that, you know, this person's never in a good mood. I don't necessarily want to be around that person more than I have to be, because they bring me down. They rain on my parade and take away my enthusiasm, and they seem to be belittling me while they're not even aware that they're doing it. They're belittling themselves mostly. So it's particularly now in this time when it's obvious that the whole world is scared of what could happen next on a political, military, world basis. There's fear, much more fear than there would have been in any average year between, let's say, 1950 and 2012. You know, in that period between 1950 and 2012, there were some scary moments. There was the Vietnam War, there was this, there was that, the other thing. But generally speaking, we all felt that the world was getting better. Medical stuff was keeping us, medical technology was advancing, we were living longer. There was a good, positive underlying spirit, which was reflected in stock market going up and up and up, you know, a long protracted boom period that had been unprecedented in prior economic ups and downs history. But now it's all, even though the economy, all of the technical metrics of, you know, inflation going down, employment at a high rate, people spending money in retail, blah, 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 all these things are good. Nevertheless, there's fear in the land. Fear is abroad in the land everywhere in the world. So on top of that, we have people who have been worrying even during the good times. And now we've got the bad times to reinforce this worrying. So this, I'm glad you picked out this topic of, is worrying making things worse? And the answer is yes. Worrying does make things worse. It does bring about, pessimists are right, because they create the downtrend that they're fearing. Optimists are right because they create the uptrend that they are expecting. It's better to be an optimist than a pessimist, because the odds are in, you know, game theory, the odds are in your favor if you're an optimist. The odds are against you if you're a pessimist. But no matter how many times I say that to somebody, pessimists cling to their pessimism, and they don't necessarily see it as pessimism or cynicism. They see it as being realistic. You know, one person who I'm very close to, a partner within business, respect him highly. He's a brilliant man. We differ on one specific point. This one specific point we differ on is, he doesn't believe that someone who has been a bad person in the past has any chance of ever getting out of being a bad person in the future. He doesn't think people can be changed. Criminals, or, you know, war criminals, or military aggressors, or, you know, all of those people that have done bad things in the past. He doesn't think that we can heal them of that. And I disagree with that. I believe that the plasticity of human beings is greatly underrated. You've seen it as a coach. I've seen it as a coach, whatever I've been, that I've seen positive change occur when people have positive and practical suggestions given to them. For example, there's a psychological, this is now actual science, law, a thing called the Yerkes-Dodson law, named after the two people who discovered it. What it shows is that if you're trying to maximize performance, whether it's for an athlete or a singer or a speaker, if you want the best performance, what you want is a high degree of motivation, but not too high a degree of motivation. If the degree of motivation passes a certain optimal point, it starts to degrade performance because you have nervousness sets in and fear of failure sets in, where up to that optimal point, motivation is a good thing. It helps focus the mind and focus the emotions and focus the person on whatever the challenge is, playing a good game of tennis or giving a good speech or whatever. But if you're too motivated by the outcome, if you're attached to the outcome, if you're worried that, gee, I better not say the wrong thing. This is a sensitive audience. There are so many ways I could slip up and say something that would just be the wrong thing to say. I can't necessarily anticipate all of those things that I might say wrong. So I better like stay up all night the day before the speech, figuring out, okay, what else can't I say? Let me just rehearse all of the things that I would just like to say and catch myself. Oh, you better not use that word. That word means that to them, and so on and so on. If you get to that point, you're past the asymptote optimal point of ideal motivation. You're now into the deep darkness of attachment to the outcome. And when I write or talk to people about discovering what their own gifts are and their own mission, their own sense of purpose, what they're good at, what they love doing, what they can enjoy the rest of their life doing, no matter whether it pays them a lot of money or not. It's what they would love to do anyway. If they can find a way to do that, they should do it. And then when I say, but don't become attached to the outcome, they're always jarred by that. Wait a second. You had me up to that point. You were changing my life. Everything was going well. You had me inspired. I already have a vague idea of what the answer is, of what I'm good at and what I would love to do. But now you're telling me, don't expect fame and fortune. Don't be dependent on it. That was half of the joy that I had a moment ago. You just took away half the joy you gave me. Mm-hmm. And that's a speed bump for people. They can't quite accept not being overly enthusiastic about the possibility of the dwelling on the upside scenario. And in fact, that isn't what I'm trying to get them to do. I want them to picture the upside scenario, the Hollywood ending of the movie of their life. I want them to do that. I just don't want them to be attached to that being the outcome. I don't want them to be brokenhearted and feel that all of this passion that I'm putting into my gifts and into trying to give my gifts to the world, that may wind up with me being an unknown person at the end of this whole game. I may have helped 3 people or 12 people or 1,200 people or 1 million people, but most people still will not have heard my name. I won't be in history books. That's like a big bring down. And the only way I'm not brought down by it in my own life is because I have a intuitive certainty that this isn't my only life. There's going to have so many more lives, all kinds of stuff can happen in those other lives that doesn't happen in this life. It doesn't all have to happen in this life. But if I'm doing what I want to do every day and I'm seeing the immediate feedback of other people's faces going from frowns to smiles, and it's not artificial, it's something that came from the inside of them that I just helped them realize, and that it's now like a permanent thing. Now they've got this permanent trigger word in their mind about non-attachment or personal purpose or whatever it might be. You can see the immediate benefit in the moment.
Mhm.
A day filled with moments like that for the next 20 years or 100 years or as long as somebody lives, that's the whole purpose of life, is enjoying the passage of time, not reaching, not struggling, killing yourself, knocking yourself out, and not enjoying the present moment, because there's going to be some reward at the end of the game where you're going to be famous, star of stage and screen, a billionaire. If you know, why wait that long to be enjoying life?
Mhm.
And why make it a dependency that if you don't get to there, you're not going to enjoy the game?
Mhm. Absolutely. I always say it's like a mirage, because when you think you are going to get there, guess what? There's something else that once you reach the outcome, there's another peak to reach. And interesting when you say there, like, don't become attached to the outcome. And the reason for that is because when you become attached, you chase it almost further away, because you need it to happen. It's almost, rather than just enjoying the moment. So I always relax. So when you think about what you want to create or what you want to bring into this world, it's like, that's what I want to do, and that's the vision, and that's what I feel is in my mind and my head. But actually being so attached to that is not healthy, because because you can have it there as a vision. I think of it as, when you were talking there, I think of it as like almost a projector, like a movie, even like an old school movie projector, right? And I think of that in your head, and it's like projecting out. It's like the cinema screen, I guess, of how we're viewing everything. But if I become attached to this vision here, I'm less likely to make it happen. So I can have the vision, I can have the projection, but it's just knowing, okay, like, that reel's playing for a reason. I don't need to be attached because I'm going to chase it away. So if I take every moment now as a learning, and if it's perceived failure or not, you're learning, and it's part of the movie that you're watching anyway. So yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is, don't be attached to the outcome, because that will actually bring about the outcome that you want.
It's well said, and concisely too. The the joy of doing it rather than the outcome that is you've led up to. And getting there is most of the benefit, as opposed to having the accomplishment and being able to receive the kudos for having accomplished it. That's a very brief moment of glory of, you know, standing on stage and getting an Oscar or whatever it is. Those are nice experiences, but that's not the point. The point is, the whole thing is the point, not just the end of the game, but the whole game is, you know, you've got all of these years to fill with great joy.
Mhm.
And share that great joy with everything around you, so everybody feels the joy emanating from you, and picks up on the methods that you use to give yourself and other people joy.
Mhm.
You know, part of it is just growing up to the point of maturity or sanity to do what you said a moment ago, that I'm going to get in my own way by getting too attached to the outcome. It's going to stop me from getting to the outcome. Therefore, if I'm an adult on the inside, if I'm really an adult, I understand I have to be self-disciplined about not entertaining my foibles that are going to get in my own way. If I do believe I have a purpose, I want to achieve my purpose every day, every moment. And therefore, anything that stands in the way that with that achievement, like selfish desires or feelings of inadequacy or the need to prove myself to myself or any of those things, I can't afford those foibles, because now I've got a known purpose that motivates me. I have to discard my children's toys of those foibles. Those were fine at the time, but they don't fit with my having a mission that I really believe in. I don't want to pretend to do the mission, but really stick with all these old childish things, because they're going to just denigrate the mission. And I could be fooling myself for years to come. I don't want to do that. I have sufficient self-discipline to be able to discipline my mind to get out of those old ruts.
Yeah, definitely. And you said earlier, as you were talking about, the pessimist and the optimist, and whatever you are, you'll be right. It kind of ignited something in me, because again, trying to steer it to help other people that are perhaps don't want these outcomes and don't necessarily realize that they are projecting their own reality. I've had coaching sessions this week, and you can almost feel like the negative energy kind of coming off of them, because they're so frustrated, and this process isn't working, and the management is bad, and all these things, right? And I can feel straight away that it's like definitely what's going on inside here. But as you said, to them it's truth. To them it is truth that it's not them, it's everything around them. And obviously, I believe coaching is a huge way that we can bring that awareness around to people. But for anyone out there that's sitting there thinking, no, you don't, Natalie, Bill, you do not know. My life is awful. I'm dealing with so many issues, problems. You can't possibly understand. What do we tell those people? Because they really believe the tape that's being played.
Well, I would advise them to separate what they can control from what they can. They do have some power in the situation, and they need to focus on that, the stuff that they can change. Like if they're working for a toxic boss in a heartless bureaucracy environment, and that's one of the things that's bringing them down, they're going to have to leave their job. They're going to have to strike out on their own, either to build their own business or to get a job working for some other company that isn't toxic and bureaucratic and inhumane. I mean, getting people to consider that there's infinite creativity at their fingertips within them, and potentially in the consciousness that they're a part of. But if they, don't want to consider that part, fine. Just within them, they have infinite creativity. They may have believed themselves for the last 20 years that they have to stay in this job, and they only have 5 more years to go in this last 5 years before the retirement. They can't take a day at a time without griping. It's just, they had enough. They really are up to here, but they can't leave because they've got this deal where if they stay 5 more years, everything's going to be good. But it's killing them. Maybe they have to rethink the economic thing. Maybe the economic thing isn't worth 5 more years. Maybe they have to give up that economic thing that they prized so highly for the last 20 years. Consider it at least. Consider every option that they have. It's all a blank slate, potentially. They can clear the slate. Maybe their life is terrible right now. But maybe they have to take potentially radical action. They have to consider all possibilities. They have to reconsider things that they've considered locked in. Take off the locks. Nothing's locked in. I think that when people are really not enjoying themselves, it's time for a change, and it may be a difficult change to make. It may be scary. It may be giving up security. They may have to make a big decision about would I rather do this, which parts of me are just jumping with joy at the prospect of leaving this job, and I could see how I could maintain a consulting relationship. I could still get some money out of this. Maybe I could make a deal with the company to recognize, okay, you're going to save some money on my payoff day if I leave sooner, but you're going to want to keep me on because you need me to pass information on to whoever you're going to replace me with. I can make some money out of that. You start to think about it. It isn't an impossible dream. It's a possible dream. And there are details that can be worked out. Or if those details with the present company are just off the table, maybe it's worth it anyway. What are the other possible things I could be doing to take care of the living economic needs, but also serve my inner needs for making this a meaningful life? My life right now, I'm speaking not as myself, but a person might say, my life right now is a living hell. This isn't what I want life to be. I got years ahead of me. I don't want to fill them this way, even for 5 more years, and then saying after retirement, it's going to get better. I want it to get better now. How am I going to do that? And is it worth the risk? What's the value of money? What's the value of fulfillment? Are they equal, or is fulfillment more important than money?
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it, right? People feel stuck because they feel they have no options, but that is because they've limited themselves, because normally those options require doing something scary or something that's out of their comfort zone. So then this is when they feel stuck. They don't like the current situation, but then they say, oh, there's no other alternative. This is the way it has to be. There's always alternatives. There's always a solution. It's just whether they almost can't give energy to that, because that means then they're going to have to do something uncomfortable. And I think it's easier to hide behind the label of, oh, well, I'm loyal, or I'm loyal to this company, or I've given years of service. It's easier to hide behind that than actually take the action, because then you're projecting that it isn't your fault. Like, it's not my fault. I've given everything that I can do. I've done everything I can do. I have no other option. I'm now stuck. And again, if you perceive you're stuck, you will be stuck. So when you were talking earlier about, you talked about like signals that people subconsciously are giving away in their either body language or their facial expressions. People can almost subconsciously pick those up as if they're telling the truth, or that they're not, or what they're projecting as confidence is. Do you think people are aware of that in like conversations, that they're actually picking those things up from people?
Some people are. I'm thinking, for example, of a former partner of mine who had taken certain courses. One of them was a course in negotiating. And in the course in negotiating, he was trained to pick up what he used the word tells. And so tells are either things you say or things that you do with your body that tell the other person something, like give away that there's a certain weakness on your side that could be exploited in a negotiation situation. So he was looking for tells. So he was consciously trying to pick up for personal advantage in practically every conversation he had with everyone. What are the tells that this other person is giving away to me that I can use against them? Obviously, I'm not fond of that. And he and I did not have a pleasant relationship. And I'm happy that we went our separate ways. But yeah, some people are actually trying to use this stuff against other people to their own benefit. I like to think of those people as hypnotists kind of they tend to exert a certain hypnotic presence. They're very aware of things. They study things, but they study things in a more malevolent way. We're studying things to try to help people, but there's people out there who are doing it the same thing we're doing, but they're doing it for the opposite purpose. They are still attached. They're still stuck to achieving something, which might be power, status, prestige, wealth, whatever it is. They're attached to it, and they're using any means possible, including manipulative means and close observation of other people. But the more general population is not doing that. Still in all, we do have these innate talents to be able to do it without even realizing we're doing it.
It's funny, actually, when you said there about people do recognize it, and we obviously pick this up because that's the kind of level of listening that you have to you have to be at to like do the kind of work that we do, and we're trying to pick that up for good reasons. And then there's almost like the manipulators that are doing it for their own benefit and their own purpose. And I guess I have unfortunately come across these kind of people, and I've always thought, you're really clever, but you're using this in, like, you're channeling it in completely the wrong way. And for me, it's a gut feeling. Like, I can just tell straight away. I'm like, my gut is going, oh my God, stay away from these kind of people. It's such a shame, isn't it, actually, to be that intelligent and have those skills and not use them for good?
Part of the support for that comes from the current anti-spiritual culture. Before the so-called Enlightenment, before the 1800s, there was a general assumption, at least in the West, well, even more so in the East, there's always been this intuition that we all have that there is something greater than ourselves, and that we're a part of it, and we're also in a way subservient to it. Whether you call it God or the Tao or whatever the universe, whatever. But in the last couple of 100 years, the human race has become somewhat arrogant and has said, under the guise of science, that we don't need God as part of the explanation. We can explain everything in the universe without God. So it's more of an elegant solution. It's more parsimonious as a science aesthetic to use Occam's razor. And if we don't need a particular variable in an equation, let's leave it out. And God is a variable that we can leave out of our equation to explain the universe. Well, that's fine, unless God exists. If God happens to exist, you're just closing your mind to reality and ruling out a possibility that shouldn't be ruled out because it actually exists. So it isn't truly scientific. It's, building in a bias, but science has done that. And hopefully is breaking out of it as a result of quantum physics, which shows that when you look very, very small scale at what the universe consists of, is composed of, it's much more like consciousness than it is like matter at that very, very fine grained level. Going back to the idea of leaving a job or leaving a company or staying, as you say, telling yourself that it's your loyalty that's keeping you there. Buckminster Fuller, at one point, decided to commit suicide. He was in love with this woman, and it was a one-way love. She didn't love him back. So he decided he was going to kill himself. And as soon as he decided that he was going to kill himself, and he knew that he was going to do it, he suddenly felt he didn't have to do it anymore. He wasn't attached to anything anymore. And he suddenly felt very relaxed. and there was no rush to do anything, just enjoying life. And why would he kill himself? And from that point on, he was at a different level of existence than he had been up until that point. He'd transcended attachment by giving up life itself, at least mentally. And then he saw he didn't have to follow through on that, because now he had freed himself from his own demons and his own problems. And he was now living a life that he wouldn't want to leave, because it's too much fun, because hey, I already gave up life, so I could go forward with it. And all of this is bonus time. And then if something causes me to kill myself or die, I've had all this extra time that I could just enjoy. So why don't I just enjoy it until something kills me? And then he did all of his great inventions from that point on. So if somebody's in a dead-end job or in a life that feels like a dead-end life, and they don't know how to change it by leaving it, okay, maybe it isn't leaving it. Maybe they should just, in a positive, constructive, friendly way, speak up at the job more openly than that person has done in the past. It's like, okay, it's been a toxic experience at the job, and all I've done is contracted away and try to keep my job and not make anybody unhappy with me. And I don't want to go up, 180 degrees in the opposite direction, but maybe I can go 10 degrees in the opposite direction and get away with it, perhaps. And if they're going to fire me, then the decision will have been made. It's kind of like the suicide decision for Bucky Fuller. I'll do the vocational suicide decision. Let's assume that I quit, but instead of actually quitting, what I'm going to do is just simply speak up constructively, positively, and in a friendly way about how we could be operating this company better. Mm-hmm. And I could even do it Socratically by asking questions rather than making statements. Mm-hmm. And that makes it more likely that the company will respond in a perhaps acquiescing way. If it's not even a statement, it's just asking the right questions in a more open fashion. So that's another possible creative outlet for change when one feels like I'm trapped.
Mm-hmm. Almost accepting the worst case scenario, but obviously you don't want the worst case scenario, but you're kind of accepting of it. It's almost, I think of me, like with my business, it's like, okay, I really want it to work. I believe it will work and all this, but okay, worst case scenario, what's going to happen? I'm going to have to go back to a corporate job. Like that is the worst case scenario. And, I don't want it, but that's the worst that can happen. That's the worst that can happen. So it's I think it's understanding what is the worst case and accepting it, even if you don't want it. It's like, well, that's the bottom. That's really the bottom of what can happen. And then you take the action to ensure that doesn't happen. you follow the action and take the action forward. I was interested as well when we're talking about, people being able to read these micro signals and behaviors and things that are not said. And you said for most of the time it's used for good, like, what we're doing, it's used for good to bring awareness, self-awareness to people so that they can change their thought processes in a positive manner. You said when people are using this in a negative light, or when they're maybe manipulating people, it's because they're attached to the outcome that they want to achieve. It's not necessarily that they want to hurt these people, but they're so attached to the outcome that people are kind of collateral damage, if you like, and they use those people for their own good. Do you think it's possible that people still achieve the outcomes that they want when they're very attached to them? Because the reason I guess I bring this up is you see a lot of people in like business that I wouldn't necessarily describe as great people, right? But they're really, ambitious. They want to make it. They're working really, really hard, and they do achieve to some level, some success, right? And I'm a great believer in kind of karma. And I do believe that what you reap what you sow, and what you put into the world, you get back out. But I'm interested, do you believe that even if you're really, really attached to the outcome, you can still achieve the outcome.
Oh yeah, I think, Putin is a perfect example, but our culture is really run by these people who have aspired desperately and they've been super attached to gaining power, and they've gained power. So yeah, it's no question about it. Now, what has that done to the world? It's put us into this place where we're now, there's a realistic reason to be concerned about the complete destruction of the human race, of the whole planet, of all life on Earth. I mean, these things are actually possible. We've got enough nuclear weapons that even if a small fraction of them were used, we could destroy the environment completely for longer than we could survive. We would have to go underground. These things are not impossible at this point in time because of these people and the achievement of power in our culture. The way the culture has evolved has put us in these dangerous straits. Now, looking at it from the viewpoint of the universe, if I'm right, has given us, we are the foot soldiers of the universe, let's say. The universe inhabits us and acts through us. And on this planet, we've been allowed to create this culture as a learning experience. And so the universe has allowed us to go down this dangerous rat hole because the universe wants us to use our free will any way we want to use it. And this is the way we're using it. And the universe feels in the long run, this would be fine because this Earth consciousness, human race stuff is going to see the harmful effects when it all blows up in our faces, and we'll start over again and build it up with, internalization of the lesson. And we will be sure not to go down this path again. And it may take us, another 10,000 years to destroy ourselves and dig ourselves out into a utopia. But the universe knows that we've got good stuff inside because it's the universe. So in the long run, it's all going to be fine. And when you have eternity, 10,000 years doesn't seem like a lot to spend.
I smile because I feel the same thing. I'm like, well, a movie has to have baddies. It has to have baddies, right? Because otherwise there's no movie. And at the end, you always know the good guys win. The good guys always win. It's inevitable. It doesn't matter how long the movie is. It could be 2 hours, it could be 20,000 years, but the good guys always win. So for me, I kind of see that these people are there. As you say, it's the learning, but our stories would be so boring if we didn't have the bad guys to bring down. So, and that's what I feel that we are, like, through our work. And there's an army of us everywhere. There's I call them light workers, whatever you want to call them, trying to topple down the bad guys. And we'll do it because at the end of a movie, the good guys always win.
Amen. I'm with you on that.
Hell yeah.
We have a lot to look forward to.
Oh, we do. We definitely do. I know you've got a hard stop now, but yeah, we are. The work that we're doing every day, it's so satisfying. And I know for me, like every week, you just see the difference you're making and the impact we're having, and that just brings so much joy. So you're doing great work in the world. We're doing great work, and we will win eventually.
And it's fun every second anyway.
Oh, definitely. It really is. Everything's a learning. And even if it didn't feel it at the time, like years ago, to have to get to this point, oh my goodness, I'm just so grateful. Like I I think I've said this to you before. It's almost like you save yourself from this mind mess. And then what you do is put the rope down to like bring more people up. And yeah, I'm just like bringing them up on the rope. That's what we're doing. So it's, yeah, so fulfilling, so fulfilling. Right. I'm going to